in the offices of Assemblyman Mr. Munford from Las Vegas, and we're delighted that you've given us some time today for this interview. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to ask you a little bit to share your personal history and the reasons that you decided that the Nevada legislature was on your list.
You know, I sort of have a little storybook life, so, you know, in some ways. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. That's where I was born and raised, and went through my, you know, my high school years, and then I went 1 year at the University of Akron, and I was very fortunate as a young man, you know, a little bit with some physical attributes in terms of my height, and I grew to be quite tall. I'm about 6. I measured for the military one time, and they rejected me when I measured. I measured 6'8"3/4", really about 6'9". And at one time during the Vietnam conflict, they had a maximum and a minimum height. And I think if you were over 6'8", they would not really decline you. You had you could make a decision to go if you wanted to go that badly, but they reclassified you. That's all. And if things got serious, they would take almost anyone. They would not reject hardly anything. But that when I, as I said, I was able to get a basketball scholarship to the University of Akron. I played there 1 year. Then I transferred to Montana State University, and my basketball opportunity continued. And it was very fortunate for me. I was able to get a free education, and plus it afforded me some opportunities otherwise too. But let me just back up. When I went to Montana, though, it was quite an experience for me as a young African-American man in the 60s. During the decade of the 60s, I did, you could say, establish some new, well, with Montana, I established sort of some history there. And the way that occurred is because I was the first black man to ever attend the university, and I was the first one to ever play any sports there. I was the first one to ever graduate from there, and also my athletic experience was, I was a very productive player, and I did very well there. Not only that, just to sort of shift from the athletics, though, there were some other things that occurred while I was at this, at Eastern, at Montana State. I had some social adjustments to make. You must remember this was the 60s, and many things in America at that time, and to some degree, they haven't totally been eliminated. Some social things were, I had to be very careful what I did, and as far as interracial dating and things of those types of things was totally not acceptable. And I had quite a few really, I could say, some very traumatic experiences with that. It occurred, but it was mostly clandestine type things, but it had some very bad consequences to it. But even though, which is sort of unique, is I was sort of accepted by Native Americans. There were quite a few Native Americans enrolled at the school I went to at Montana, and matter of fact, some of my closest associates socially were with Native Americans. Now, most of the culinary workers are those that are working in the lower blue-collar jobs in the gaming industry. Then the culinary jobs is what they call them, are now mostly Hispanics. But when I first arrived, it was mostly African Americans, blacks. And but what it did provide an income, and many of those families raised their children. And, excuse me, the conditions were very different in terms of family makeup. There was mothers and fathers in the home. People don't remember. Sure, welfare existed, but in the 60s and the 70s, we were still experiencing the first movement on the part of what President Johnson did on his Great Society and War on Poverty. And that's when welfare came in, and that's when Medicaid came in, which is the same thing, I guess. And then that's when Medicare came in, and all of those different type of government assistance programs. People don't recall. They did not come in until the 60s.
65.
Yeah, 65. That's right. That's right. And then in West Las Vegas, our first poverty program that was purposely or was ushered in to deal with the racial problems was EOB, is the acronym EOB, which it stood for.
Economic Opportunity Board of
That's it exactly. That's it exactly. And that was the first, you could say, assistance program by the government that was supposed to be sort of our, you could say, our road or path to improving our lives.
The Community Action Agency.
Yes, that's it exactly. That was supposed to be the ladder for us to climb up and to be prepared to compete. That was it. And now it's collapsed. It doesn't exist anymore for various reasons. And I don't know. I myself, getting back to your original question, I ran on, I don't want to use the word platform, but I ran on the idea that I wanted to turn our community around and improve our community economically so we could, where we would have a type of condition that existed in our community or in my district, where we would have some economic development taking place, where we could get a chance for people to create jobs. Jobs is the key anyway.
Given all that passion and that insight and that knowledge, what do you want to affect here at your time in the college?
Primarily, my focus up here is being an educator. So for so many years, I'm a strong ally of education and the teachers, and I want them to be, you could say, given the support that they need. And I think it's, sometimes I hear reports, and you've heard reports, they beat up on the teachers a lot, and they blame the teachers for the failure in education, but it's not really their fault. It's there's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, I don't think there's no panacea out there, no silver bullet that can solve our educational problem. I mean, even the national government has gotten involved, whereas if you look at the Constitution, that was one, you could say, responsibility or power that the federal government never had. That was strictly, something, a power that was given to the states, that was relegated to the states. And for years and years, they did, because people don't know, they didn't start the Department of Education under Carter. That was like 1978, because prior to that, it was always done by the states. And I don't know, I can understand what the federal government's trying to do, but I still think it should almost be just focused primarily on the state responsibility. But our culture has changed so much. I mean, that is a distraction for kids today, because I've seen it. I taught 5 decades. I taught the decade of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the new millennium. And I've seen the transitions and the changes that have taken place. And I just, it's not so much the kids even sometimes, but it is, kids have to come to school with the right attitude. And that's usually something that is developed and something that is sort of nurtured and something that is sort of, the value of it is basically developed in the home. And so the kid leaves home in the morning, and mother is sending them out to school, or father, whoever is sending them out to school that morning. A certain attitude has to be implanted in their mind that when they walk into that door that morning, this is business, and you got to listen to that teacher.
So in conclusion, if you had, what do you want to leave for children of the future, for them to know about what their role in our state is?
Without question, a child first has to be given the idea and the understanding of how valuable an education is and how important it is for the future, not only of themselves, but the future of this country. And that if they commit themselves and make a sincere effort in education and go as high as they can go in education, the rewards will be very beneficial. You can't miss with it. But that has to be instilled in their minds. And as I mentioned earlier, it starts in the home, but then there's a certain amount of effort and input can be, implemented or done within society itself. Sure, there's a lot of things. I hear all the time, all kinds of programs, what people are doing for the youth and all these sorts of things, which is fine and it's well. But when it all boils down and it comes down to delivering and performing, it's got to be in the classroom. And then it's got to start when that child leaves school in the morning. Because I used to see them come in the classroom. Where were their heads when they came into the classroom? Because you will see all kinds of situations. Some kids will come in equipped. Some will come in with nothing. Some will sit back in the corner and just be daydreaming and not wanting to participate. But then the teacher has to, one of our efforts should be to try to include everybody in the entire lesson that day, no matter if they weren't equipped, but go to them and tell them, ensure or instill in them that you're still part of this class. Now bring your book tomorrow. Bring your pencil tomorrow. Bring your notebook tomorrow, because I want you to succeed. A teacher has to think every student in that class is the most important, person, at that period of time, and make them feel like they're welcome and they're important. And you can do it as a teacher.